Baruchim Aboim B'Shem Hashem, B'Shem Eigen Shir Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Harav Yakov's Smith Shlita on Yichud situation. What can be done? Nimtza b'matzav shel Yichud, ma yesh la'asos. That's great schus is sponsoring a shir called Eigen Shir Torah at 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Harav Smith.
Over the years we've discussed many subjects regarding Yichud, but today we're going to talk about a specific sugya, and that is when a person is in a matzav of Yichud, whether it's comes home and it's just a cleaning lady at home, or question of a babysitter with Yichud, or at an office. Once someone's in a situation of Yichud, what can be done? So as we'll see as we proceed, this is certain a schus of makam and ichal on neshamayim. There are some questions that are mamish negeya, and I didn't find them before, so let's work together to try to clarify this. One thing is clear, that we find no less than 3 places in Shas, Kedushin Daf Pei, Avodah Zarah, Mavav Mabei, Sanhedrin Chaf Aleph, that it's almost mefurish that Yichud is an issur deraisa. To quote the Gemara Avodah Zarah, Mavav Mabei, Yichud the Bas Yisrael deraisa, and the Gemara is a pasuk. So obviously, and that's the way the Shulchan Aruch paskins in Apple Simon Chav Beis, and the Beis Shmuel in the beginning of Chav Beis points out that Tosis and the Torah and the Mashmois of most Rishonim, the Yichud of the Deraisa. So how can you find a heter for an issur deraisa? So as we'll see, and this is important to mention, regarding a goita with a goyish cleaning lady, etc., that we'll see, Siv Beis and Shulchan Aruch says only the Rabbanon. But even the Rabbanon have even divrei sefer. So I should mention any biological child, grandchild, great-grandchild, there's no problem of Yichud, or a mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, or one sister is mutter if it's not bikfiyas, but anybody else, a niece, an aunt, and other relatives, avada would be Yichud. So how could we think that there's a heter because you're stuck? In fact, as we'll see, even a suffix Yichud, we have to treat as a sveika deraisa. So this is pashut, that the fact that we're not choishin anybody for doing an aveira, a person together with his mother-in-law, that's Yichud deraisa. Not that we're choishin anybody, but this is something we have to understand. Yichud is an issa atzmi. Just like we don't make cheshbainis, I'm going to wear shatnez because of this or that. Yichud is an issa atzmi. Now Ravada, we know the Rambam says that be careful from Yichud to a goyim hagadol. It brings to the worst aveiros. Unfortunately, we see this. But at the end of the day, even if there's absolutely no chashash, there's still the same issa. Moshe Rabbeinu had an issur deraisa to be miyachad with his Aaron HaKohen's wife Elisheva, even though they were beyond suspicion. But the emphasis, we have to realize that who knows? If we're not a Moshe, we're not an Elisheva, who knows? The Gemara tells us, Ein apotropos l'rayis. The Chinuch spells it out in Mitzvah Kuf Peiches. Even if the issur gives you 1,000 guarantees, don't worry, you have to worry. Amech kulam tzadikim, that's true, but we have to keep it that way. And I must mention, at least Dadach Kima Baramiza, in Nebuch we hear from time to time breaking news, terrible news, someone was thought to be a very firm yid, did terrible averis. So our first reaction on Azoy Daf Zayin, I don't believe it, I'm down the kavschos. Okay, it's very nice. But then again, when people we start hearing testimonies of victims, and we start saying, I can't believe it. Why can't we believe it? The Torah the Gemara tells us, Ein apotropos l'rayis. The Chinuch says, Afilu elef harevim doesn't help. And the goyim hayoyse gadol when there's situations of Yichud. So we have to certainly be malam b'tzchus in every situation, but we have to take this issur very seriously. But the big challenge, of course, in Yichud is a person's uncomfortable. He's together with his mother-in-law. So what should he do? Run out? If he walks out, she's going to think, you choished me? But that's not a heter. It's an issa atzmi. But what's interesting, we learned the Gemara, we have to get the message. The Gemara says, the Kedushin Pei Alf Mabeis, Rav Meir said, he's haru bibnei biti. The Heilige Rav Meir told his Talmidim, when I'm together with my daughter, watch me. Now that's a plea, because Chazal, the Anshe Gedol, took away the Yetzirah to one's daughter. Rab Tarfon said, be careful when I'm together with my daughter-in-law. What's pshat? Gedoi le'yolim, gedoi she'elyon, worried about a daughter? So both the Rambam and the Smag in Kuf Chavav both say the same yisoid. They did it to teach the Talmidim, don't be embarrassed, do the right thing, and don't think, Ma Yomer HaBriyas. The Gemara tells us a story, Rav, the Heilige Rav, Gemara says, Rav, Amoyer, Tatanu Palik. Rav and Yehuda were going on the way, and they thought there was a Yichud situation. So Rav said, Dal Karech Mikami Gehenim. Let's get our feet out of Gehenim. He saw the Gehenim Psucha Lafana with a matzav of Yichud. And Taka the Chinuch in that same place points out, if a person sees an Isha in a situation of Yichud, and he sees the Gehenim Bein Eineha, he'll know what to do. You know, the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda asked Rav in that story, but two men, there's no problem of Yichud, what you worried about? So Rav responded, yeah, but it has to be Ksherim. Who said we're Ksherim? Rav? But again, Al Taman Ba'atzmacha, and again, we have to not just learn the Gemara, but live the Gemara. You know, I just saw the other day, the Lev Aliyo, in the back of the Lev Aliyo, the Shvivi Lev, there's like stories that the Rebbe Lapian used to say. So in Ois Kuf Chav Dalet, he said he heard from the Rav of the city of Aliska, that this Rav with his own eyes saw in the Pinkis of the city of Lisa. Pinkis was like a ledger, a diary that every shtut kept different stories. So this Rav told Rebbe Yapian, who said that this Rav saw in the city of Lisa, that was the Rabbanos of the Nesivas. The Nesivas had a daughter, became an Amman at a young age. And then she had a daughter, granddaughter of the Nesivas, who became a Kalam. So the mother and daughter went to the big city to buy the tzarchei chasana. They had some money, they were going with a Goyish wagon driver. And the wagon driver realized where they're going, so he made, quote, a wrong turn and ended up in his own house, called a friend and tied them up, mother and daughter, the Lisa Rav's daughter and granddaughter, and made a big fire, and they're going to throw them into the fire, Rahman al-Islam, get rid of the evidence, and keep all the money. But the guy, the wagon driver, and his accomplice started fighting how to divide the money. And just then a soldier came in and said, what's going on here? And saved their lives. So that night, this all says in the Pinkis, the Sivas came back to his daughter in a dream. The Kivas was no longer alive. He said, what'd you do to me? I heard what was going on because you were Nichshel and Yichud. You went with the Goyish wagon driver. And I went to Bezin Shamayla. I said, how could this happen? He said, sorry, she was Ayvan Yichud. So I went to a Hecha Oilam. I said, what about the Schus of my Torah? No, that saved us. That saved you. So it's interesting that the Yichud is something that, again, is there's no heter, the fact that nice people and Erlicha people, and certainly when you're dealing with Goyim. But let's be a little more positive. Rabbeinu Yoina writes in Shari Tshuva and Gimel Zayin, be careful with Yichud, because when a person is Nizah, that was what Zorach al Nafshe or Yiras Alekim Yizbarach. That brings a tremendous lichtigkeit, and I guess we could add now a Nusach, if Yichud is the Goyim HaGadol, so being Nizar in Yichud is the Mekadosh HaGadol. So now let's apply this to the halacha, more practical halacha l'maisa. So avada, and that's partial, like I mentioned, there's no heter because the person's embarrassed. I mean, Gadol Kvayid Abrius, but not when we're talking about an issur gomer. Plus, it's partial as well, that the fact that it's my panasa, a person that's working, and he goes to people's home, and sometimes he's together with a woman. It's not a heter. Shulchan Aruch Yeridei Kuf Nun Zayin Aleph says a person has to be willing to give up kol mamoinai, not to be oiv on a lav. How much more so the issur of Yichud? You know, there's a whole sugya. Could be probably a half hour of a shir. The Shem Aryan, Even Ezer, Lamed Gimel, the Tuf Tam Vadas, Kama Kuf Tzadik Beis, and others discuss if Yichud is a question of Yeharag Vayavar. Question about a woman that had to have a baby on Shabbos, had to go with a Goyish wagon driver, but no one went along with her. It's Yichud. Pekuach Nefesh. But who said Yichud is Nitcha because of Pekuach Nefesh? Because it could be it's an Avizraya Darayas and Yarg Vayavar. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we don't paskin like that. But at least we see if it's a question of Yarg Vayavar, the Zichar no Heta of Panasa. The Zahiras Yidden had for Yichud is inspiring. You know, the Divrei Chaim, the Sanzarab, used to say that sometimes the Baruch Shem sends into our world an neshama kadosha, that like that of a Tana, that was Lashon of Divrei Chaim, just to inspire us, sometimes to give us chizik. And he picked the mashal, the story about the Gra, the Vilna Goyen. Vilna Goyen was once at home, and a girl came into the house, and he suspected maybe it's Yichud. And the Goyen, without thinking, jumped out the window, not knowing where he's going to end up. He was an old man at the time. So the Divrei Chaim said the sensitivity that the Vilna Goyen had for a shayla of Yichud. No, I said this story once, the Rabbin, and he told me his shviga, his mother-in-law, during the war years, was 14 years old, and she once was chayshiv for matzav Yichud. She jumped out the window on her own. And she ended up in a hospital, broke both legs, but that saved her life. Because the Nazis came into the city, and for some reason they didn't check the hospitals, and she survived the war because she had broken legs, jumping from window because of a matzav of Yichud. So, Lamaisa, before you jump out the window, let me tell you, you don't have to jump out the window. We paskin, it's not Yarg Vayavar. But the heterim, people say, I'm embarrassed, parnasa. But if you really want, I could tell you, the fact is no heter parnasa is a beferish Mishnah. Because the Mishnah Kedushin that pay bays, the last Mishnah of Kedushin has a few things, recommendations. One of them is a person that's single should not take certain jobs that will bring him to a matzav of Yichud. Usually you might have a wife with him, but a single person can't do that. Zok the Rambam Perish Mishnayos, this Mishnah is teaching us that Bishvil Parnasa, there's no heter of Yichud, which is Dvarim Pshutim. The Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch and our Simon Siv Zayik, quoting the Rambam, says that a person that's in a matzav of Yichud, because of his job, find a different job. If you can't work it out, yifne l'molach acheres. So now that we have, I guess, a better appreciation of Yichud, let us approach the various shaylas. So the most important yisoid of the heter is the Gemara Kedushin. It's basically 2 lines, but it's really the yisoid is that we have to know. Amar Rabba, Baila Be'ir, Ein Chayshim Misham Yichud. We'll soon mean touch that, but if the husband's in the city, there's no Yichud. Amar Rabbi Yosef, Pesach Basuach Levishus HaRabim, if the door is open to the street, Ein Chayshim Misham Yichud. Now, in the past, we were zoich to give a whole share about Baila Be'ir and a different share about Pesach Basuach. And we can't repeat it, but one thing we do know, that there are 2 independent heterim. One we'll call Baila Be'ir, the husband's in the city, and one we'll refer to as Pesach Basuach. Now, I'm going to start first with Pesach Basuach. You'll soon see in a moment why. Pesach Basuach basically is based on the following assumption. If a person happens to be alone in the street with an Isha, so is that Yichud? I mean, physically it's Yichud, no one's there. But in the street, it's not a matzav of Yichud. So the Gemara is saying, if you open the front door to the street, that's not a matzav of Yichud. It's almost like you're on the street in this situation. So this is the heter of Pesach Basuach. The other heter is an Isha is home alone. There's a doorbell rings. Who's there? Yankel the plumber. Oh, she buzzes him in. Then she goes, what am I doing? Yichud. A man and a woman is Yichud. And the front door's already locked. But if the husband is in the city, that Chazal said, the way Rashi says, Eimas Baila Aleha, she's afraid to an Avera in the husband's immediate vicinity, and that prevents the issur of Yichud. So again, the practical application, the doorbell rings, who's there? Yankel the plumber. So if she's married, the husband's working in the city, there's no problem. Let's say the husband's working in New Jersey, so she has to say, excuse me, please leave the front door open. Now that's a double milah. First of all, this way she knows that there's no Yichud, but the Zalman points out in Halicha Shleima, the end of Lamed Hey, let's say she knows very well in a situation that the husband is in the city. Let's talk about the husband's in the city. So she doesn't have to tell him, leave the front door open, because Baila Be'ir. But Dr. Zalman, she knows there's no Yichud, but he doesn't know that. Yankel the Plumber doesn't know that. And he's walking into a situation that he doesn't know of a heter, and that might be on the Isha Lifneiva. It's not really an Issa, but Niskaven Lechel Basa Chazir, V'acha Basa Tleh is also. So, a woman has to be on top of things. She wants to buzz the fellow in. Well, let's be clear. If it's Baila Be'ir, say, please, you could come in. Don't worry, my husband's home. There's no Yichud. If it's not Baila Be'ir, She has to tell him, leave the front door open, so both know there is not a matzah of yichud. Now I'm going to ask you a question that is not academic, it's about probably the rest of this year. We have two independent heterim, Baila Be'er and Pesach Basuah. Which is a better heter in your mind? You wonder, who cares? The Gemara is matter both of them. In fact, it's the same lashon, ein chosh nes yachid. But I'm going to tell you something that's going to be gay for the rest of this year. Because Lamaisa, logically, Pesach Basuach is a much better heter. And I'll tell you why. Baila Be'er, we are comfortable to say they will not do an Aveir because the husband is close proximity. Shkoyach. But why is that different than Moshe and Elisheva? You're telling me she won't do an Aveir because the husband's in the city. But if it's a matzav of Yichud, the front door is locked, you're relying on Baila Be'er, why isn't it also because the matzav of Yichud? Bishloim Pesach Pasuach, the front door is open, it's not a matzav of Yichud. But Baila Be'er, why isn't that a problem? It's a matzav of Yichud with a guarantee. Why is that better than Moshe and Elisheva? And this seems to be the sheet of Rashi. Rashi on that Gemara, Baila Be'er, Rashi says, Ein choshim m'shem yichud lehi lokos, there's no malchus mardus, the mistafi mi bal hashta osi. So Zok Toisis, Rashi holds that Baila Be'er is not a heter. It's still awesome. The only accomplishment is there's no malchus to Rabbanan. Toisvis says it can't be, and I think Toisvis' biggest raya is the Gemara says two halachos, Baila Be'er and Pesach Basuach, and the exact same lashon, Ein choshim m'shem yichud. So Tois says Rashi is not right. Baila Be'er is a heter gam. But what's Rashi? So Rav Shach has a beautiful shtickle. Sif say Dvarim Nechoichem in on this Rambam in Hilchos Beir Perek Chavei Halacha Chav. And he says Rashi held that Yichud is an issur atzmi. So who cares if the Baila is Be'er? Zokt Rav Shach. So why is there no malchus? So he says a beautiful yesod. Why b'chal is there malchus? The Rabbanan, if it's an issur deraisa. Teretz is an issur deraisa of Yichud, and the malchus Rabbanan shlo yargilu. They shouldn't come to Averis. So the Gabi, the malchus, we could say if Baila Be'er, she won't come to the Aveira. So there's no malchus to Rabbanan. But you're left with the issur deraisa because it's an issur atzmi. So Rav Shach says, Oy bazoi, we can understand what Rashi shita. Rashi held that Lamaisa is an issur atzmi, and even though there's no chashash, it's still going to be us. So we have understanding of Rashi, but Tosis needs a hezbah. Why takis Baila Be'er muta? It's a matziv with a guarantee. So the Chayr Teretz is pashit. Moshe and Elisheva, there's no action that's being mafkia the issur. It's just two halacha people. But here, the Baila Be'er is a presence. It's a metzias. It's almost like a door open. The fact that the husband is in the city, that takes away the matziv of Yichud. The Yamshel Shloime in Kedushin Daled Chavbei says that Roy V'Shayim go with Toisvis, and that's the way the Shulchan Aruch paskins. Baila Be'er is a heter gomer. Okay, the Bach, Chachmas Adam, Achoishish. But now that we understand these two heterim, let's proceed to the next case. And that's the Gemara. The Gemara then tells a story. Rabbi Bibi was eating together with Rabbi Yosef and his wife, and they were eating upstairs in an attic. Those days they had a different situation. They had an upstairs and a downstairs, and you went upstairs with a ladder. So the three ate together. Then they finished eating, so Rabbi Yosef, and that's the way the Pais can point out, Rabbi Yosef had to step out, he had to go down for Mariv L'Moshel. So he told his family, Rabbi Bibi is upstairs, my wife is downstairs, it's Yichud. Not really Yichud, it's two different floors, but take away the ladder, so Rabbi Bibi can come downstairs. So therefore there won't be a problem of Yichud. Frag the Gemara, what was Rabbi Yosef worried about? I Baila Be'er, and for the Gemara, the aside for today, Shani Rabbi Bibi the Shezvinte Havoy, they're like Shezvina, they were like friendly, but Gaisba, it was a Liboy Gasba relationship. Rabbi Bibi and Rebbetzin Yosef had a certain relationship. Now, of course, we're going to say this clearly. I say relationship not in a bad way, chas v'shalom, But as we'll see, there was a certain friendship. You know, it's interesting, the Gemara says shushvinte. Typically, shushvinte means a friend. The Targum on the word reya is shushvina. Now, I don't know exactly why they were friendly, maybe they were related, but Lamaisa, there was a certain relationship. The Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch quotes verbatim. What does liboy gaspa mean? Kegoyin shegidla imay, they grew up together. Oishi krevasli. This is either it's a relationship, or they grew up together since they were children. Now they're gedolei Yisrael, but you know a certain relationship remained. You know, Rashi, the Rashi lashon is bal bris. We find that in Parash Lech Lecha, Eshkel Amar, and on air were bal bris Avram. Now, it's very hard to give a definite, definition of liba gaspa, but clearly a stepchild or a sibling, a niece that stays in your house for an extended period of time, certainly a therapist is a liba gaspa. The hilchos Yakov in a beautiful tshuva in Even HaEzer Siman Samach Vav, he was asked by the Krasner Rav after the Second World War, who remarried, and his wife had a daughter, so it was a stepdaughter. So he asked the hilchos Yakov, what about Yichud? So he says, you should know one thing, that liba gaspa does not mean something wrong with you, because the Heilige Rabbi felt he was liba gaspa. Liba gas is a relationship, doesn't have to be bad. Now again, it's very hard, there's no liba gaspa detector or a blood test to see if the liba gaspa. So I looked around, I tried to find some type of criterion. The Shevet HaLevi in Chelekei Reish Gimel Gimel, he says liba gaspa is a ribui devarim. They have more discussion together. The Dvar Halacha in Siman Zayin, the end of Har Tezvav, he says the barometer of liba gaspa is if they don't shterzuch, if they're comfortable enough to ask the other one for a favor. Typically, a man doesn't ask a woman for a favor, but if there's a relationship that they do favors one another, that is an indication of liba gaspa. Rabbi Feld in the Sefer, he says they talk freely one to the other. Maybe that's similar to the Shevet HaLevi. But all agree, like I tell you, that it's lav dafka in a bad way. But lamaisa, a relationship, is problematic. Why tak is liba gaspa asa? So Rav Moshe and Even HaEzer Chelik Dalet Samachei Vav, and we'll soon see the Chidah in Shar Yosef, Siman Gimel Netshuvas, says because lamaisa there is certain amount of yedidus, there's a bigger yetzer hara. So now that might negate the fact that Ba'ir, because Lamaisa there's a closer relationship. But be that as it may, liba gaspa is a real problem. In the Chachmas Adam, in Binas Adam, Kuf Chavav Yud Zayin, he says from a totally different angle. He says typically a husband comes home and finds his wife talking to another man. It's a tzarachi and gadol, so she's scared of doing that. But liba gaspa, there is already a relationship, so it's not even suspicious. So the first step to the aveira already began. But let's review the issur, and let's try to apply it lemaisa. Yichud is an issur Torah and issur atzmi, the goyim hagadol. Even if a person's way beyond aveiros, but we saw Baila Be'ir is a heter, Pesach Besuch is a heter, but liba gaspa there is no heter of Baila Be'ir. Okay, so now let's apply this lemaisa. First of all, again, a person, I'll give you an example. He wants to go bring something to his mother-in-law, a shviga's house. No? Is he allowed to walk into a shviga's house? If Baila Be'ir, might not be a heter. If it's a liba gaspa with his mother-in-law, so Baila Be'ir is not a heter. So you have to make sure that the front door is open. We'll soon see even if that works. But again, there's no clear-cut guidelines, but very often a son-in-law and a mother-in-law have a certain liba gaspa relationship. How about if it's a suffix liba gas? He has a sister-in-law, he's not sure. And now he has to go bring something to the house. If it's liba gas, Baal Bi doesn't help. So we could say, Stam Yichud is a deraisa. Suffix Yichud is suffix deraisa. Or maybe you'll argue and say, well, really, it's Baila Be'ir. So there's a heter. You're questioning, maybe the heter doesn't apply. Maybe it's a suffix drabanan. But Rabbi Felder says, and he's right, that what are you talking about? Maybe fakert. It's a Baila Be'ir, it's a real Yichud deraisa. You have a suffix, you have a heter. So what are you left with? A vada isa and a suffix heter. That's a sveika deraisa l'chumr. A Bachi asked me a question. I saw Yadir Shemayim. He learned the sugya, I guess, and he's going to overnight. He had to stay in his married brother's house. So he was worried it's him, his brother, and his sister-in-law. And he was concerned about li boy gasba, and Baal is not a heter. How could he stay in his brother's house? I said, that's very nice, you're right. If your brother-in-law is not in the house, he goes to marry, you have a problem. But in here, it's not just Baila Be'ir, it's Baila Ima. And that, we know, is a heter. Because as we discussed, like it was last year, that there's a heter Baila Be'ir. But fakert, let's say a man is home with the cleaning lady, and his wife is shopping. There's no heter of ishtay Be'ir. It's only Baila Be'ir that a woman's scared of her husband's presence, but a man's not scared of his wife being in the city. So there's no heter of ishtay Be'ir. But there is a heter of ishtay imay. It's a ferish mishnah kedushin peyam beis. So if ishtay be'imay works regarding taka in that situation, kol shkein baila ima avada that's muta, and taka saw the dvar aloch and zayin chabez says this for sure. And this is the chayra of a pashit because the fact that the husband is there overpowers the liba gasp. We had a shaila once with two brothers wanted to go and do some work in a third brother's house who was married, but the brother wasn't home. It was just the two brothers and a sister-in-law who they felt is li by gaspa. So pashtus is no heter. But wait a second. The Mishnah says in Kedushin, 2 men and 1 isha is mutter. That's the Shulchan Aruch Sifei. The question is li by gas, does that negate the heter of 2 men? So the emes is, in Svara, it's not a problem. Because what's the heter of 2 men? One is embarrassing the other one. And since they are both ksherim, li by gas is not a matzav of it does not take away the heter of 2 men, because 2 men is not a matzav of yichud. So we can't say that because they're li by gas, they're going to do averis. So Taka also the Dvar Halacha in Perik Tes Siman Zayin, he says even if it's li by gas, that means 1-on-1 is a problem. But 2 men, two brothers with their sister-in-law, even if it's li by gas, is mutter. And he has a beautiful raya, because the Mishnah in Kedushin Peyam Beis that speaks about the various issurim of Yichud says 2 men are mutter with all the various isurim of rayos. Now wait a second. 2 men are mutter with the various arayos, right? Typically relatives might be li by gas, a sister-in-law, an aunt, maybe a shviga, and yet the Mishnah says 2 men are mutter t'ksherim. Is a raya 2 men, even with a li by gas, is mutter. Next question, again, is much more negeya, and it's interesting, is not as mefurish as we'd like it to be. Let's talk about the same situation. A man wants to go to his mother-in-law or sister-in-law's house to get an item. So he's walking into Yichud. I buy the beer, but there's no heter because liba gaspa. I'll ask you a simple question. Would it be a heter to walk into his sister-in-law's house and leave the front door open? In other words, buy the beer is not a heter by liba gaspa. Is there a heter pesach pasuach? It's not in the Gemara. The Gemara says, Ba'ila be'ir, there's no heter of liba gaspa. How about Pesach Pasuach? So Pashtus will say that zil basa taima. If indeed liba gaspa is a major concern, like Ramesh explains, is a big Yitzhahara or the Chachma, whatever the case is, but if it's a bigger problem, so how could it be mutter in Pesach Pasuach? Or maybe, wait a minute, for us today, that's not so convincing. Because we said earlier, Ba'ila Be'ir is just a guarantee. So then we could say, if Li B'Gasba, there's no guarantee. But Pesach B'Suach is a better heter. Pesach B'Suach is on a matzav of Yichud. So maybe if it's on a matzav of Yichud, then even if Pesach B'Suach, it's mutter. Or maybe, Adarabba. The Gemara equates the two, Ba'ila Be'ir Pesach B'Suach, doesn't make any difference, right? Both the same lashon. And if it doesn't work for Ba'ila Be'ir, how can it work for Pesach Pasuach? But Re'ezah Pella, listen to this. The Gemara's sequence is, and I quote, first the Gemara says Heter Ba'ila Be'ir. Then the Gemara says Pesach Pasuach. After Pesach Pasuach, the Gemara says, but Li by Gaspa doesn't work by Ba'ila Be'ir. Why did the Gemara put Li by Gaspa after Baila Be'er, where it belongs. The Gemara should say, Baila Be'er is a heter, Liba Gaspa is not, and then Pesach Basuach. Maybe the Gemara wanted to imply that Liba Gaspa is also even by Pesach Basuach. Why is the story Baila Be'er? Because that was a story. So it's unbelievable. Here we have a simple question. Is there a heter of Pesach Basuach by Liba Gaspa? And the indication from the Gemara seems to be that it's taka muta. In Svara, we could say it's muta. L'chayra. Or then again, we're going to say, what do you mean? Liba Gaspa is a bigger problem. But it's not as simple as we'd like it to be. Because both Rambam and Shulchan Aruch change the order of the Gemara. They say, Baila Be'er is muta. Liba Gaspa is awesome. The next seif, if it's Pesach Basuach, is muta. So we're getting mixed messages. The Gemara seems to say it's muta. Rambam Shulchan Aruch seems to say it's no heter. And probably the earliest source, Rabbeinu Yerucham, quotes the Ramas. We have two Rishonim. That two Rishonim say, in Liba Gaspa, afilu Baila Be'er u Pesach Pasuach is not a heter. Evidently, Liba Gas is enough to negate even the heter of Pesach Pasuach. The Dvar Halacha in Per Gimel Ha'or Lamed Tes, he brings l'chayr a beautiful raya from the Gemara. Listen to this. Rabbi Yosef had a problem with Yichud with Rav Bibi. So what heter did he do? He's thinking about Baila Be'er, right? That the question about that wasn't heter. He took away the ladder. Frag the Dvar Halacha, why didn't he leave the front door open when he went to Ma'ariv? You'll say, who said he held the heter of Baila Be'er? Of Pesach Basuach, I'm sorry. Who said Rabbi Yosef held the heter Pesach Basuach? Look at the Gemara. Who said the heter Pesach Basuach? Rabbi Yosef, Pesach Basuach is muta. So the fact that he didn't mention the heter of Pesach Basuach is a raya that Liba Gaspa negates both of them. So now we have a mashmois from the Gemara is muta, but we have mashmois of Shulchan Aruch, and again the mashmois of Rabbi Bibi that is muta. That is awesome. So then I saw the chidah. Now this chidah is in the back of the Shar Yois Masechta Hoyrius. You have to have the whole set of Kol Kisvei chidah in Siman Gimel, and he is very convinced, and this great very negeya, that Pesach Basuach is a heter even for Liba Gaspa. He brings two toises in Shabbos Yud Gimel, Shabbos Yud Gimel Amud Beis. That toises seems to say beferish that Pesach Basuach works even by Liba Gaspa Ayin Sham. So you have Rabbeinu Yerucham, Mitzarecha, that's Machim, but two toises is muta. But what I found music that is, he says, but in Svara, it doesn't make sense that it's awesome if Pesach Basuach. And Imamish says, like we told you before from Avshach, when you have Baila Be'er, that's a concept. But right now, she's in a matzav of Yichud. That's a problem. So you can't be Tzeitz Muta even though Baila Be'er. But Pesach Basuach is not a matzav of Yichud. So what's the problem? And then he adds another Ge'onish Einfall. Baila Be'er only works for the woman. So we're going to say that Lamaisa, the man has a Yetzirah. Maybe the Baver will be done. But Pesach Basuach works for both. So why can we say that Baila Be'er doesn't work with Liba Gas, but Pesach Basuach works for both? And that seems to be his maskana. That the Gemara Taka says Baila Be'er is not a heter if Liba Gaspa, but Pesach Basuach is. So this is some challenging question. The Mashmois of the Gemara, they're both the same heter. The Mashmois from the story that it wasn't that the fact is that that it's one heter mamish. The story from Rabbi Bibi seems that Lamais is not a heter. Svar is a hin, svar is a her, Rishayim ahin. So Lamaisa Allah Lamaisa, the Gedolei HaPoiskim on the page, the Chalkos Mechaykik and the Beis Shmuel, both say taka like the Ben Yerucham, that if it's a Liba Gaspa, there's not even a heter of Pesach Basuach. I saw the Dvar Halacha quotes from Akiva Eiger's letter that also holds there's no heter of even Pesach Basuach regarding Liba Gaspa. the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, Aruch HaShulchan, Rav Moshe Chelik Dalet Siman Samach, all say Liboy Gaspa negates both heterim. However, the Taz is also on the page, Tivkat and Ches, the Chachmas Adam, the Dvar Halacha quotes the Chavetz Chaim, Chazon Ish, and the Stipler, that makes this chiluk. Enechanami, there's no heter Baila Be'ir, but Liboy Gaspa is a valid heter. Shevet HaLevi in Hey Reish Gimel, in Pesach Pesach, I'm sorry. And the Shevet HaLevi in Hey Reish Gimel says, Mi'ikir Din, you could be, that's really seems to be the right thing. So it's very challenging. You know, we see Mamish Maracha Mul Maracha. So Abchatzkel Arat Zechayin Laracha in the Emek Tshuvan Aleph Kuf Samachei, he says, the end of the day, it's a Sveika Derais L'chumra. Because again, Yichud is typically Deraisa. You have a suffix, if it's a heter of Pesach Basuach, you have to treat it like a suffix Deraisa. But the good news, if when applicable, the Shevet HaLevi that I mentioned, and I saw the Teres Yichud quotes Abba Yashiv, another sefer also quotes Abba Yashiv, that if you leave the front door Pasuach Mamish, not just unlocked or ajar, but if it's wide open, that makes it a non-matzav of Yichud, and that'll be mutter in the case of a real, because that's a real Pesach Pasuach.
The whole heter in Pesach Pesach was at that time when you had only one room, but we have a house of 10 rooms.
And if you're in a quiet street, the Pesach Pasuach heter is questionable from other angles as well. A person goes in the back room, so the Pesach is not going to work l'chayr. But besides that, the whole heter is besafik. And again, these things come up on a daily basis. You go to a sister-in-law's house, a shviga's house, any situation of libay gasba, where the Gemara says ba'alibiyah doesn't work, even Pesach Pasuach shouldn't work. So the eighth would be, you could bring a friend, another man, you could bring your own son, whatever it is, but just to be making with this alone, this is something that you have to be on top of things to make sure if indeed that's really a heter. Chassan and Kala, if they meet before the Chasana, they have to realize that's a situation of Liba Gaspa. Now, of course, the fact that the parents or the in-laws are Be'ir is certainly not a heter. It's only Baila Be'ir. But to leave the front door open is not right, because according to many, there's no heter of Pesach Pasuach. So, B'chlal, it's a good idea when a Chassan and Kala being miyased their home, they should not look for kulas. I don't think a chassan kal should be in a makam of yichud with a Pesach Pasuach. It's unhealthy. But basically, you have to shtelevek the shtur b'kedusha. So we're going to say that for chassan and kal, even Pesach Pasuach is not a valid heter. What might be a heter, the famous Noid Behuda's 2 words. Noid Behuda said in Madur in Kakama Siman Ayin Aleph, if you have a Pesach or Chaloin Pasuach, which means the window shade, not just window, the window shade is open, and you're living downstairs, and people could see into the front room where you are, that's like the situation of Pesach Pasuach. So if you want to be alarmed, then you could say, well, Chaloin Pasuach, a front window that's open, the shade's open, exposed to the street, is better than Pesach Pasuach. Pesach Pasuach, someone could walk in. Here, you're on candid camera. Everybody's looking in. So maybe Taka Chaloin Pasuach is better than Pesach Pasuach. Okay, but again, if you ask me, that's not a place to be Chassan Kala B'yichud with a Chaloin, but that's probably a better heter than just plain Pesach Pasuach. A babysitter is very often Yichud Mamish. You can have a girl babysitting a boy over 9, or a boy babysitting his niece over 3. That's regular Yichud. Now, but again, you might say, well, Pesach Pasuach. But you have to know, very often a babysitter is Libay Gaspa, a nephew, an aunt, whatever the situation is. A steady babysitter becomes very close to the children. So a babysitter that's Libay Gaspa, there won't be a heter of Baila Be'ir if she's married. And even Pesach Pasuach, we just saw Maracha Mul Maracha. So it's very important that parents have to be on top of these things. Now, kind of makam laheyer, that, parents are so devoted to the chinuch of the children, there has to be the equal devotion to when girls are babysitters. We say, some of you send our daughters to babysit in the house. We hear stories, your hair stands on end. A girl from a wonderfully sheltered home was exposed to a home that had the Pischei Shel Gehenim, ve'ein laharach, pasuach lefaneh. She went into a house that the internet access was available, and the beginning of the end for Heilig Yiddish Techter. So if we're so, concerned about everything our children eat, the best kashrus, where to send our daughters to be babysitters, This is a place that is a shchicha zeika. But besides that, you're sending them to a fine family, but at least make sure that there's no problem of yichud, and it's an opportunity to mechanech our daughters, that, there's yichud, but there's no problem because of this, whatever it is, make sure they know why it's not a problem. More importantly, another situation of liba gospel that shouldn't be, but sometimes is an office. A person has a secretary, works with him constantly, there's constantly back and forth. You have to be very careful that there should not be a situation of liba gospel. Again, here, Rahman al situation that we hear of daily basis and their interactions, and the secretary looks the best at all times and is always on the ball, so to speak. It creates a very dangerous, unhealthy relationship. Rav Vosna and Chelikei, Reish Vav, Sivkot and Gimel, he says, we know how the matzav is garua harbe, halvai, we could say that women shouldn't work for men, but that's not practical. But there has to be a constant shmirah, that there shouldn't be a situation that could bring to the worst averis. Yichud is the shmira, is the garim hayoyse gadol, but being careful, and again, the gdaras that we make, that's the best we could do. We mekayim v'skadishtem v'yisim kedoshim adam mekadosh atzmei ma'at habolatayim masayin oisay. If we do the best we can, we could be hopefully confident that we'll have the siyata d'shmaya. The last group of questions regarding a yichud with a goita or a goy is also a little bit, in a certain sense, makam and ichalano. Let me tell you a simple shayla. A question, the doorbell rings, who's there? It's a worker, a goyish worker, a goyish reader, a goyish government official, a goyish aide. The question is, what's the halachos of yichud of a woman with a goyish man? So one thing we got a good introduction to this sugya in Avodah Zarah of Chafahim Beis. The Gemara says, by a guy, ishtay imay, even if the wife is with him, there's no heter of ishtay mishameres. In other words, a man and a woman, husband and wife, is not a problem of yichud with someone else. But here you could have a goyish man with his wife and a Yiddish woman. There's regular yichud. I ishtay imay. So Rashi says the loy kapta, because she does her averis, he does his averis. It's a mutual relationship. Live and let live. Leave me alone. Which is a very horrifying understanding of the goyish relationship. Now I can't explain this if it's every goy, but I do have Amunah in the Shulchan Aruch and Even Ezer, Siv Gimel. Ishta imay is only by a yid, but loisis yachad Yisrael in kusis and with a goy, even if Baila ima or fakert. So basically we have this heter of ishta imay by a yid, but not by a goy. Is there an issur yichud bichlal, a Yiddish woman and a goyish man? Why not? Because the ma'isa it's awesome. Even though the ma'isa it's not in a regular situation of a Yiddish man and a Yiddish woman, but no doubt about it, the poskim say this. The Chum Sadeshet and Simon Reish Mem Beis and Even Ezer Kuf Tes Vav Dalid, that yichud, a woman with a goyish man, is avada and issur deraisa. I must mention, same question, the doorbell rings, who's there? A goyish delivery man. So besides yichud, you have to be careful who you buzz into your house. A woman's home alone. Yichud is all a problem of pitui. They might coerce, they might convince them to do an aveira. But in the world that we live in, there's a problem of being ma'anis, Rahman al-Islam, coercing. For that, there's no heter, even if yichud is mutter. So we have to mention that people don't realize this. Hashem Yerachim, a woman a man comes to the house and makes an advance. Rahman al-Son, it could damage a woman for a lifetime. We're talking today that there is no chash of being ma'anis. He's an upright individual. The question is it yichud? The answer is absolutely. It's yichud daraisa, a Yiddish woman with a goyish man. Now that is definitely an important point to mention. We have to rule out, number one, coercion, and besides that, there's a problem of yichud. Now, the question is, let's say the same situation. Who's there? It's the goyish neighbor. He wants to fix something. He's a guy. He's a handyman. Can she buzz him in? What's her heter? Because the isha knows by law her husband is in the city. So if Yankel the plumber comes, she could buzz him in because Baila Be'er. Now the question is, if Goy, handyman, comes, is there a heter of Baila Be'er? So it's interesting. We would think that this is beferish, but it's not in Shulchan Aruch. So l'chayra, let's think. There's no chashash of being ma'anis that we ruled out. The only question is pitoy. No, if Baila Be'er is such a strong deterrent, maybe taket's mutter, because she knows her husband's in the city. She won't be mefuta by him. And taka the Radvaz and Chayil Gimel Taf Bayalef seems to be mekel. The Dvar Halacha in Perek Zayin Sif Yudalid, he quotes a number of poskim, an impressive list, that if there's no chashash of oinis, it's only pitoy, the Yiddisha Baila Be'er would be a heter. However, he adds the Chazaynish was machmir. And Yedua, the Rabbi Yashiv, quote in Teres Yichud, in Zayin Ches, was also chayshish for the Chazaynish, that just like we know that a goy is more of a problem mitzad the chashash of oinis, so Chazal never allowed a woman to be with a goy, even if Baila Be'er, because of the chashash of the problem of being ma'anis. Chatzkel in the Tshuvas in Gimel Tzadik Vav says in our Medina they're much more worried about killing another person, but the znus is not so much. There's not so much of a shmira. You can't rely on Baila Be'er. So again, the Dvar Halacha does quote many makilim. I can't say it's vadayasa, but no doubt about it, the woman buzzing in Yankel the plumber is a heter of Baila Be'er. Buzzing in the goyish worker, even though she thinks that there's no problem mitzad oinis, many poskim are machmir. I'm sure you realize it's not as pashut as we would like it to be, but this could be on a daily basis, and again, we have to be careful. How about a situation of libay gaspa with a guy, which really shouldn't happen, but if it's libay gaspa, then you have another problem, an independent problem of avada libay gaspa, and that, of course, for that is zichah no heter. How about two goyish workers come to deliver furniture, and again, the ish is home alone with two goyish workers. So we know two Yiddish men and a woman, there's no problem of yichud, that's a Mishnah. But two goyish women, two goyish men, is the same problem. One guy is a problem, and two guys is a problem. And taka, it's pashit that an isha should not allow two goyish men. That would be a problem of yichud. Two men, Yiddish men that is, and a goiter. So that's a lot better, because two erlich men one will watch the other. But two goyish men and one Yiddish woman, avada, that's a problem. Where the goyish man comes a big problem when they have an old man, an old erlich, and he has a male aide. The man is sick, but he gets around. So a typical case. The man went to mincha on his own, and he left his wife together with the goyish aide. So a goyish man and a Yiddish woman. What's the heter? So here l'chayr we have a valid heter of Baila Be'er, because her husband's close by. Now, if she doesn't, we saw someone not makel with Baila Be'er with a guy, which this case is, she's with a guy, so it's probably a better idea to leave the front door open. Hopefully, even that's not so pashut, but at least you have two tzaddim to be makel. If the husband's asleep and the wife is walking around the house, and so is the goyish maid, but that's still a heter of Baila Ima. Baila's right there, so even if he's asleep, she won't do an aveir. The very painful question, we discussed this last year, but let's say the husband Nebuch is not lucid, and if he sees the worst aveir, he won't know anything about it. So again, I have to stress, he's still a man, he's still her husband, and still a father and a grandfather, but Lagabi Yichud, it's hard to say that Baila Ima, if Lamaisi he's dysfunctional. And most poskim say that, again, the respect he deserves, but he's not Baila Ima. The Dvar Halacha has a tshuvas in the back of a sefer, Simon Zayin. He feels that Baila Ima is such a strong deterrent, it would work even in this case, because you never know. But it's definitely a das yachid, and a bitz negeya, I would advise asking the shayla. I saw Rabbi Yashiv had a tragic shaila, because it's sad to hear these type of shailas, but a balas tshuva, an erlich woman, her mother remarried, her first husband was the father of this balas tshuva, her mother remarried to a guy. So Rabbi Yashiv, she can't ever visit her mother, because her mother is with a baila ima guy. So the erlich balas tshuva is being yichud with a goyish man and a mother. And her mother is not at all a shemeres, because she's a prutza, she married a guy. So here you have a situation, a mother can't see her daughter, because the girl, the balas tshuva, is together with a guy. It's a stepfather, not a father, and a mother's a prutza that's not a shemeres. That's the shahs we have today. Next group of questions is a goyisha woman, a goyisha clean lady, a goyisha aide. So avada yichud, a man with a cleaning lady, a perfect example. He comes home unexpectedly. His wife didn't know, but he had to get an afternoon off, and it's only him and the cleaning lady. So it's a Yiddish man and a goyisha woman. So avada, that's yichud. Here is the one case that all agree that's only yichud d'Rabbanan. The Shulchan Aruch and Siv Beis Paskins that's a gezerah of Bezdin that asked yichud with a goita. Now some say that that's only the Rabbanan is by a goita that's not married. A goita that's married would be yichud deraisa, which is very schwer because there is no ishus by a woman. So most poskim say a goita, even if she's married, she's not allowed to be married, and that's only an yichud derabanan. The question that I mentioned, the husband comes home and it's only him and the cleaning lady. So lemaisa, even though the wife is be'ir, there's no heter of ishta be'ir. What's the only eitzah? He has to walk out of the house. You know, this is an experiencing kana adnal atzmai. She's the boss and not him. Oh, we're going to get to that. Wait a second. So Maisi can't go into the house. Is there an eitzah Pesach Pasuach? That's my question. Because we just said Pesach Pasuach with a goy is a machlaikis. So here you could be a lam. Then again, it's not before. You could be a lam. You could say, well, Pesach Pasuach by a derais, we have to be machmir. Here it's Pesach Pasuach in the most a derabbanan, and it's ishtoi be'ir, which is not much, but this is something that's pasha, not mefurish. But if you want to say, you could say, well, Pesach Pasuach even by a goy is machlokes a mamekel. Here it's a suffix derabbanan at the most. Don't forget, because with the goy is only derabbanan. So if you leave the door wide open, you're certainly better off. But even if not, hamekel yashami lismach. Question: the goita, the cleaning lady, is married. So the question is there a heter mitzad baila of the goita is be'ir? That's a new one. She has a husband. Let's say she has a marriage that lasts. Is there a heter baila be'ir mitzad the goita? So here, this doesn't sound right at all, because the Gemara of Zara put it very clearly. She does her averis, he does his averis. So avada and avada, there's no heter of being with a goita, because baila shall goita be'ir. What's not mefurish is maybe even if baila ima, there won't be a heter. Because we said before that if you have a goyish man with a Yiddish woman and ishta ima, it doesn't work. But here I did see a number of poskim, and it's based on earlier poskim, that a goita has a certain fear from a husband. So if the husband's in the city, that's no heter whatsoever. But a goyish woman who baila ima with there, he helps her clean. And then the Yiddish man walks into the house, so that would be a heter of ishtoi, of the baila of this ishta is ima. Okay, so that's taka chiddush, don't forget. Because we said a Yiddish woman cannot walk into a house where there's a goy and his wife. I'll give you an interesting example. Pashat's Negeya. Let's say a young couple is looking for a house in all the neighborhoods today, in Lakewood and in Linden, all these places that Yidna buying goyish homes. So the husband says, you know what, maybe not Negeya at all. You go check out the house, and if it's a good idea, give me a call. I'll come running over. She's not allowed to go into a goyish house, even though the husband and wife are both there. Why? That's a very shikmara. Ishta ima is not a heter by a goy. So the only eitzah would be if the man goes. You check it out first. If you like it, call the wife. Because there's a better heter. That's only a man with a goiter, and then Baila of the goiter is Be'ir. Is mamish imay. Now, this is a question I must mention of a goiter. Shouldn't be, but if you have a steady goiter, that might also be a problem of gaspa. I mean, again, you have to find better gaspas, but if that's the case, then you have to, be on top of that as well. Now, Lamaisa, someone asked me about hiring a cleaning lady. Which is better, hiring a Yiddish cleaning lady or a Goyish cleaning lady? So the emphasis, first of all, we always must mention this whenever we can, is v'chzaktaba. If a Yiddish woman wants a job, you give her a job, you have a mitzvah. Also, with a Yiddish woman, if she's married, there's a heter Baila Be'ir, which you don't by a goiter. The flip side, of course, is that you have to be more careful with Yichud, because if you're miyachid with a Yiddish woman, it's an issur d'oraisa. If you're miyachid with a Goyish woman, it's at most an issur d'rabbanan. But Lamaisa, that concept of Erzaktaba should be highlighted now. It's hard to find a woman that will do cleaning, but any situation, hire a Yiddish woman is Avada Maila. Now, we also had this question where a Goyish aid is Liba Gaspa, which is very often the case. So you have to keep that in mind, that complicates matters further. Two more questions I wanted to mention. Someone had the shaila, a bachan yeshiva, and again, it's chassid. Every day on a daily basis, he went home during lunch, and the cleaning lady was always there, and his parents were not there. So he told me what he did was he opened the door and told the cleaning lady, "Don't close the door until I get to my room." And he got to his room, he locked the door into his room. That's not a heter. I mean, the Pesach Zur was a good heter, but not when he went to his room. She closed the door, and he was silent, but he locked the door to his room. But all the poskim say that that's not a hafkah for the Ma'aseh Yichud, because as easy as he locked the door, he could open the door. So that's just le'amar it's chassid. The heter might be if Pesach Pesuach, that would be a valid heter, but beyond that, there's not a heter of locking himself into the room. And the last question, which is extremely important, of negaya to almost all of our shaylas. Let's say you have to go to bring your mother-in-law, sister-in-law, aunt, whatever, a situation you have to just bring something into a situation of yichud. In other words, Baila Be'ir, Pasuach is not an eitzah. You want to bring something to your mother-in-law's house, sister-in-law's house, aunt's house, but you make the following tzad heter. I'm going in and out, I'm going to go at lightning speed, I'm going to put it down, be out the door in 12 seconds. That's much less than even the biggest chumrah in shir yichud. Yichud, some say 3 minutes, 5 minutes, okay, some make machmer half a minute. But I'm not in the house for even a half a minute. So maybe it's not an issur yichud at all. And if you'll be alarmed, then you'll say, I found a raya to this. Because the Heintige Poskim discussed the very common question of yichud in an elevator. You press the button, you go into, and there's a woman there. So almost by all situations, you never stay in, could never stay in an elevator, the shir yichud, unless you have one of these fancy big apartment buildings. But the mice, if you can't stay the shir of yichud, it's takamuta. So here the lamda once say, I'm going to run in and out of the house, I'll be less than even the smallest shir of yichud. But that's a toyus. Because in an elevator where you can't stay on your own in a matzav yichud, that's taka heter. But here, you're in a matzav, you can stay as long as you want. The fact that you run out, that makes it chatzi shir. So chatzi shir asam and atayra, so you have to find one of the other heterim, I can talk to you.
Shem Yichud heter like you would be yashikar to Smith for today's shir. Tananya ben Akashem Maratza Galishpochel Zakes is the shell of your him Torah mitzvah shenem al and Chofes and Sidkei Yagdol Torah v'Yader.
That's what you say?
Amen. Even though over here it's Libenu gospel, but there's no shot of Yichud, everyone's welcome to stay for the secret.
That's so to leave.
I don't want to stay.
Okay. So let's just chaz what we learned today. Yichud is an issur Torah, almost all situations. It's the Gorim Hagadol, but it's also an issur atzmi, even if there's no chashash, but it's an issur, like any other issur, could be even, according to some, Avizrai Darayas, and Yergal Yavar, but there's no heter because of you're embarrassed, or you're not worried, or parnasa. Pesach, Pasuach, Baila, Beir, I should mention, we gave a share by each one individually, so it's available. I'm sure if Simcha could offer it to the item who needs it, but that we didn't do the details, but basically each one is a heter bifnei atzmai, but l'halacha, both are mutter, l'chatchila, even though, and we're not going with the sheet of Rashi. Pesach, Pasuach is more of a heter, but Baila, Beir is enough of a heter. We do find the Gemara that Liboy, Gazba, takes away the heter of Baila Be'ir. What does it mean, Liba Gaspa? There's some type of relationship, not in a bad way, but there's a certain reyus, perhaps, a certain free way of talking. They would ask one favors one from the other. But Liba Gaspa definitely negates the heter of Baila Be'ir. A suffix Liba Gaspa is treated like a suffix Deraisa. When you have a situation of Baila Ima, then about it's mutter. In other words, a bach could stay in his brother's house with his sister, even though it's Liba Gaspa, because that's Baila Ima. Two men with a Liba Gaspa is also mutter if they're Erlich men. Pesach, Liba Gas and Pesach Pesuach is a subject of Machlokes Gedoyle Poiskim, Mamish Maracha, Mul Maracha. And as we said, we should treat it like a suffix Deraisa. If the door is wide open, then even Rav Ozna, who's machbez mekel, because that's not a matzav of yichud. Chassan and kala should never be in a yichud situation. They shouldn't rely on Pesach Pasuach. Maybe Chalein Pasuach is a heter mitzad halacha, but it's not a healthy situation. A babysitter can be liboy gasba, but there's no heter if in a situation which a liboy gasba, there won't be a heter of Pesach Pasuach. A person comes home and he finds himself matzvah yichud should not go into the house until he knows if there's a heter. An office needs a lot of siyata d'shmaya to keep the kedusha, and avada, the only eitzah is siyata d'shmaya is making shmiras. A secretary should never be liboy gaspa. There should be a certain distinct, difference between liboy gaspa and a business needed relationship. A guy, there's never had to be a woman with a guy, even if the guy's wife is imay, ishta imay, is not a heter. You want to look, and a woman wants to look at a house that a guy is selling, there won't be a heter even if the wife is there. By a guy, the only heter, when there's a heter being with a guy, when there's no chashash of aynus, of course, that otherwise it's a dangerous situation. The Pesach Pasuach is a heter, as we said. Two men and a goita is also mutter. A male aid, when the husband went to shul, the wife's allowed to be with the male aid if it's Baila Be'ir. If the man is not lucid, he doesn't know what's going on, it's a shver shayla, but it's hard to be saimach that there's no issur yichud because he's there. We said a tragic story where a mother remarried a guy, and then the balas tshuva can't even go visit the mother, even when the husband is home. A goyish woman is one case that's only midrabanan, pashas, even if she's married. There is no heter of Baila Be'ir by a goyish woman, that's for sure. Pesach Pasuach, maybe you could be mekel in a situation when it's an emes Pesach Pasuach. And basically we said with a Yiddish woman, there's more, it's an easier situation than with a goyish woman. If it's a question of hiring a worker, a Yiddish woman with the right shmir is a better eitzah.